Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're going to get started briefly. Just come on in, make yourself comfortable. And thank you for being with us this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are zooming in from. Okay, so welcome everyone to the November 2024 You Belong in STEM webinar, Reimagining STEM Innovation Beyond Technology. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, share where you are joining us from today. As questions come up for you to direct to the panelists, we encourage you to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen to write in your questions, and we will do our best to respond. We're really eager to see where everyone is coming in from all across the country. This is exciting. And then one more quick logistics piece before we really dive into the conversation is I just want to note that opinions that are expressed today do not necessarily reflect the Department of Ed. Just a quick disclaimer there. However, we've got like a powerhouse panel ready for you. And as I mentioned at the top, we're really thrilled that you are joining us today. My name is Mecca Smith. I'm a senior policy advisor in the Office of Deputy Secretary Cindy Martin, and I have the wonderful privilege of supporting our P through 12, so our pre-K through 12th grade STEM portfolio. I've worked on this webinar series. This is the 7th of 7, called the You Belong in STEM webinar series, and we've been doing this for about half of the year. As we've been engaging in these conversations, we've engaged really thousands of stakeholders over the past few months. And we've gone into deep dives with experts across the field in many topical areas. So that includes, as you can see the list there, out of school time, supporting students in rural areas, students with disabilities, supporting girls of color, encouraging teachers to join and stay in the STEM field, and more. And we know that there is incredible leadership happening at the local and the national levels, really driving innovation in STEM. We at the Department of Ed are here to amplify, inspire, and capture those successes so that these promising practices can really continue to multiply and scale. If you want to learn more about the work that we're doing, feel free to access our website on the QR code on your screen. And today's conversation is inspired by National STEM Day, which is annually held on November 8th, if you didn't know. So NOV8, innovate. You see how we get NOV8, innovate. November 8th actually fell on a Friday this year. We thought it was a little unfair to host a webinar on a Friday. So we're hosting the conversation today and really want to highlight the diversity of innovation in STEM. So there's a lot of attention, as you all are probably very familiar with, currently paid toward like generative AI and those other emerging technology tools, which makes a lot of sense because they're relatively novel. And it's important that as an ecosystem, we really understand them so we can use them safely and responsibly. However, while innovation does, of course, include integrating technology, it also goes beyond this. And it's really about taking an interdisciplinary approach to learning, making the world feel real for students inside their classrooms and learning spaces, making lessons personalized for students according to their individual needs, and ensuring that all students really have access to high-quality learning experiences. Our speakers today are going to share some real informative examples of how their approach to innovation really improves their effectiveness, the engagement, and the accessibility of STEM education for their stakeholders. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Sam Dinesh, Policy Intern in the Office of the Deputy Secretary.
Thank you, Mecca, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Samyukta Dinesh, and I am thrilled to be moderating today's webinar on innovative approaches to STEM education. As Mecca mentioned, I am currently a policy intern at the Office of the Deputy Secretary at the U.S. Department of Education, and I'm also a final year undergraduate student at the University of Texas at Austin, where I study social justice informatics. And my research focuses on digital equity and bridging the digital divide, issues that directly impact how students across the country access educational resources and opportunities. And so today's conversation is especially important to me because we will be exploring ways to engage students in STEM that go beyond emerging classroom technologies. We're going to do this by examining hands-on creative approaches and we hope to uncover strategies that foster a deeper, more inclusive engagement in STEM. So I am honored to introduce our fantastic panelists for today. We have Reggie Duncan. He is an education program specialist in the Office of Public Engagement at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. Also joining him is Dr. Jorge Valdez, Education Program Advisor, also in the Office of Public Engagement. We also have the incredible Melinda Thomas, who is the Executive Director of Pet Care Trust and Pets in the Classroom. We have Hugo Moreno, co-director of the South Central Washington STEM Network, and joining him is Hannah Sinka, who is a STEM specialist in their virtual STEM role model project. Each of our panelists here today bring a unique perspective and set of experiences to the table, and together they will offer a holistic view on how we can reimagine STEM education to really inspire and support every student. So without further ado, I will start with our first question. And something that Secretary Cindy Martin says and uses is the phrase hands-on, minds-on learning. And we know that experiential learning can spark curiosity and really deepen student understanding. And so for the panelists today, the question is, what specific activities or projects have you implemented that have allowed students to really explore STEM concepts in a practical way? And I'd love to start off with Dr. Valdez and Reggie over at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
Great. Thank you, Sam and Department of Education. I'm happy to be here. I love Deputy Secretary Martin's quote, hands-on, minds-on. At the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, we're America's innovation agency. So innovation is built into the DNA of everything that we do. And in the Office of Public Engagement, we have a wide range of hands-on, minds-on learning experiences that really not only deepen students' understanding of STEM, but also ignite their passion for innovation. One of the most impactful activities that we have been doing over the years is the USPTO Invention Challenge, where students get to work through a process of identifying real-world problems, brainstorming solutions, and then designing their own inventions while they learn about the tools that help them learn about patents and trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. These are tools that are essential to any innovator's journey. So give you an example, we implemented instructional techniques such as SCAMPER, which is an acronym that stands for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, and put, which offers a structured brainstorming approach that encourages students, to look at different aspects of an existing concept or invention. This framework fosters creativity and helps students think truly outside the box. There's a link, I think, a webinar on this topic on the EdWeb link that I think someone might drop in the chat. But in one recent session, we had students tackle everyday challenges that they identified in their own lives, from household tasks to environmental issues. And they were able to work collaboratively, drawing on different perspectives, and even using things like patent drawings, right, that are available as a source of inspiration. The excitement that we have seen throughout the years is truly contagious as students begin to see how their ideas can actually come to life. And, by the end of this process, they get to present elevator pitches to quote unquote sell their inventions and communicate about their work. And it builds not only their technical understanding in STEM, but also supports the communication and collaboration skills that we all know are foundational skills for all kinds of learning. So these activities are powerful because, once again, they help students see STEM as more than just technology. To the question, it's way of thinking and solving problems that they can apply across any field. And our goal has been to make STEM accessible and inclusive, and really to show students that innovation is really within everyone's reach, regardless of their background or access to technology. And this approach, grounded in the minds-on, hands-on experiential learning, truly allows students really to be cognizant and apply those skills.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mellis. That's a really great insight into the work that the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office does. I also want to open it up to Hugo and Hannah, if you guys have any insight into what this looks like at the Washington STEM Network.
Yeah, sure. We can offer a couple examples. So our team at ESD 105, based here in Yakima, Washington, we have the privilege of serving as both our regional STEM and Career Connect Washington regional network for our 4-county region, which covers about 25 public school districts and 23 state-approved and tribal schools. And so we really try to merge both our STEM work and our career connected learning initiatives whenever we work with students. So we have projects that follow students, or students have access to, all the way from pre-K through the workforce, through career. So some of those things that we do are early STEM family nights in pre-K, Step into STEM in 4th grade, STEM Like Me in 7th grade, and career prep and career and technical education in high school. So all of these projects, initiatives really give our students the opportunity to have hands-on learning experiences, really connected with careers. And we really, a lot of our work revolves around the cradle to career approach. So we really believe that students need to have hands-on experience and exposure to some of these career paths. And a big emphasis on our careers that we focus on as well are in STEM, since Washington State has so many jobs that require STEM skills. So these are just some of the examples that we have for our students to have hands-on opportunities to learn about different STEM pathways and also graduate STEM literate here in our region.
Yeah, and then in the virtual STEM role model project, which we'll share about later, of course, we provide opportunities for students to just learn about different STEM career pathways. And some of the things that the students have learned actually are about job shadows and internships. And so one of our presenters that showed up and spoke with some of our students is from the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle, and they shared a 4-week virtual summer internship to our students, and it's for high school students. And in this program, the students got to learn some computational tools that are used in cancer research. And so it was a lot of hands-on skills in coding. And some of our students applied, got in, and just were able to learn new skills, be curious, learn about different fields in STEM. And without this project, we wouldn't be able to learn about these opportunities for our students in our region and to share out to our, our districts and our partners.
Thank you. And Melinda, I would also love to open the question up to you to hear about all the amazing work Pets in the Classroom does.
Thank you. So Pets in the Classroom offers grants to teachers to help cover the financial cost and the equipment that teachers need to have a pet thrive in the classroom. So this really enables students to have a hands-on experience with a living animal and to make a very tangible experience in their education. And with over 50% of our classrooms being in Title I communities, we know that without these grants and the innovation approach of teachers, they might not have these opportunities. We also offer pet care guides, right? And that is something that the teachers use to introduce pets to their students. And with that, that's just the intro to learning about habitats and the care systems that they need. And with this first step, the other thing that we also want to make sure that we provide is the teachers have some tools. So we also provide standard-based lesson plans so they can utilize the pet into their curriculum and that teaching. And 98% of our teachers share with us that having a pet in the classroom is very engaging to all of their instruction. And with that, it also builds the social environment within the classroom, enabling kids to explore all of their curiosities when it comes to STEM and the natural sciences. And Pets just make learning fun.
They do. Thank you, Melinda. The next question that I'd like to move on to is specifically for the South Central Washington STEM Network. And I was wondering if you could tell us more about the impact that the STEM Virtual Role Model Project that you mentioned has had on students in your region, and specifically what aspects of the program have been most effective in inspiring students to consider STEM careers, and how the connection influenced students' confidence in pursuing STEM fields.
Yeah, no problem. I can give some context on why we decided to go with this project. In our region in rural South Central Washington, as you can see from my background, many of our communities and our students lack connections to industry and professionals due to a number of factors. But one of the most significant barriers that we come across is the rurality of our communities. So our students are far away from industry, from large corporations, and often have challenges with transportation as far as being able to visit these employers in person or meet these professionals. While a lot of people may think of Washington State, and think of Amazon, Microsoft, Boeing, Starbucks, those large corporations, there's actually a mountain range that divides our side of the state from those companies. So in our rural area, what we proposed to do, or what we decided to do in our project, was figure out a way how these students could still connect with these STEM professionals across the state. And so that's where we decided to develop a virtual opportunity for our students from rural and farm working families to connect with STEM professionals and near peers currently pursuing a STEM pathway. We know from regional data from student surveys that most of our students have aspirations to pursue a post-secondary education leading to an in-demand career and family wage job, which there are a large number here in Washington State, but a lot of them require those STEM literacy skills. Many of our students, while they may have those aspirations, struggle to see themselves as STEM professionals if they don't know the pathway or know anybody in their life who has gone into one of these STEM careers. And this is especially true for our students from backgrounds that are underrepresented in these STEM fields. So that's where we came about as far as developing our project. And Hannah will give you a little bit more information on the impact that's had on our students.
Yeah, thanks, Hugo. Yeah, in this program, so we've just made it a goal to intentionally find role models who look like our students, share the same backgrounds as them. Maybe they're close in age and they work locally or go to school locally. And we just really just want somebody who shares that same experiences as our students growing up in the Yakima Valley. And so in these virtual sessions, we have our students connect with these role models by basically the role models sharing their journeys, their struggles, their obstacles, their achievements, and advice and life experiences they've learned while they were in high school or a post-secondary program or in the workforce. And so also like our role models also share a bunch of like opportunities for our students too, kind of what I just shared before. So sometimes they share their contact information with the students so that they can explore and ask more questions about what they're studying, what program are they in, where do they go to work. And this allows the students to just build this amount of information for themselves and hopefully for their families too. In this program, so we've been working with our students for the past 2 years. We're currently in the 3rd year of our program. So we started off our students as 9th and 10th graders, which is super amazing. And they've been hearing a bunch of these stories these past 3 years. And now they are current juniors and seniors in the program, which is incredible. And seeing them grow up these past 3 years, I've noticed that, they are taking advantages of like dual credit programs at their school, whether it's going to a college in the high school program, going to their local community college, or like partaking in their high school's program, like their local technical skills center. So building these skills, building their resumes, and learning all these things. And some of our seniors this year, they're applying for colleges or technical trade programs or military pathways. I get to talk to them and hear about what they're doing, and also applying to scholarships and programs that some of our role models are in right now or went to. So that's pretty amazing. And also, we recently have some students who, especially juniors, who have reached out to some of our role models. And one of our role models is a local civil engineer. So she grew up here. She went to one of our high schools that we're serving. And she's a woman in STEM, which is incredible. And they've actually reached out to her to schedule a job shadow with her and her company, which is really incredible. And we've also been able to share those opportunities with some of our building contacts at these schools so that they can share these opportunities with their students as well. So I truly believe that this program has inspired some students and are just sharing a plethora of opportunities for our students in our region.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Hannah. And I'm sure the audience it's also been incredible to hear about the success of the STEM Virtual Role Model Project. The next question, I'd love to direct it towards the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And so Reggie and Dr. Valdez, I know you mentioned with initiatives with the Teachers in Classroom Division, like the National Summer Teacher Institute and the Master Teacher of Intellectual Property program. And I was wondering how your team has seen educators integrate intellectual property and invention concepts into their classrooms. And I was wondering if you could share examples of how resources like Equip HQ have helped teachers inspire students to think as future innovators and entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely. As Dr. Valdez shared, we actually have a week-long professional development opportunity for teachers called the National Summer Teachers Institute. I'm sure we have that link that we can drop here in the chat for participants. But during this experience, teachers learn the ability to engage students in authentic real-world projects and problem-based learning across multiple fields of study. I actually am an NSTI alumnus. I had the pleasure of going through our incredible program prior to my time at USPTO. And some of the things that Dr. Valdez shared is exactly my experience. I had the ability, specifically around the pandemic, to develop a unit for my students dealing with real world problems and questions that they had. So at the time, a lot of those questions were, why is everybody taking all the toilet paper? Why is everyone taking all the sanitizer? Everybody remembers those days, right? So we were able to kind of integrate some of the skills that I've learned through NSTI with my students. So at the time, they were learning about free enterprise, how the free enterprise system works. They were learning about supply and demand. We were also learning about the spread of infectious diseases. So what we did was develop a project where the students were tasked with developing a new invention, right? A new solution to solve this problem of resource scarcity. And they were learning about the basics again of patents. Why is that important? Why do we need patents? Obviously, the branding portion was integrated, kind of part of that invention challenge portion that Jorge or Dr. Valdez had shared with us. And, at the time, I'll tell you, I'll be honest with you, Equip HQ is absolutely amazing K-12 resource that we have. And I'm sure we can drop that in the chat as well. That did not exist for me at the time. So it was a lot of just kind of figuring it out. Did have a lot of information I gained from my time at NSTI. But that online resource actually does a lot of the heavy lifting that I kind of had to do with my students while we were trying to solve these complex problems, right? And helping them all see themselves in STEM and invention, which is super crucial. But on this site, these teachers have access to videos, lesson plans, even videos for kids to see themselves in invention. I always emphasize to my students, everyone's, seeing themselves as mathematicians and scientists. It wasn't until the NSTI experience that I realized, oh my gosh, I never at any point thought to make sure all my students understood that they could see themselves in invention. Because more often than not, we ask some students what the inventors look like, and they say, oh, they're really, really smart, or they got glasses, lab coat, kind of the old traditional things you'd see with the scientists, right? And I was really shocked because I'd spent a lot of time really focusing on them seeing themselves as scientists. But obviously that invention piece is super important. So a lot of the things that the teachers have taken from NSTI that integrated in their classrooms, we even have some teachers who've left our NSTI experience and had their students apply for patents, whether that's through invention teams or them starting within their school some type of invention program for students to see across disciplines, right? How these disciplines all come together, converge as they're solving and answering these complex questions and problems. But throughout that NSTI experience, you also we have a program, the MTIP program, where teachers are selected after their time at the NSTI program. Many of them have been through an NSTI. That's not exactly a prerequisite, but many of them have been through the NSTI program where they have experience in invention or intellectual property education, and kind of a similar thing. Right now, this is a trainer-trainer model where they would go out and be teacher leaders, where they're providing PD opportunities for people in a region or nationally. And again, just really getting that importance of everyone seeing themselves in invention, not only to our students, but obviously also to our teachers as well. So we've seen lots of different iterations of ways that people have used things since NSTI. But it's certainly an opportunity that was presented to me that led my pathway here to the USPTO.
Thank you, Reggie. I'd like to follow up and discuss a little bit more about the Master Teacher of Invention, Education, and Intellectual Property program, which we, for short and obvious reasons, call it MTIP rather than the whole name. But this is a program that truly has been transformative in helping educators across the country think about how do you bring the concept of intellectual property, which many people have never even heard about, right? And innovation together into the classroom experience. And there's a link that we're dropping now in the chat. But basically, this program works with a group of very dedicated educators, as most of not all educators are, who truly are passionate about integrating and learning how to integrate intellectual property concepts into their teaching. And so what we do is we give these teachers in-depth training on intellectual property, short IP, but also we instruct them on how to integrate invention and entrepreneurial skills into a wide range of subjects. So we're not just talking about STEM here. Yes, we are talking about STEM, but it really expands to other disciplines like social studies and art, because in fact, when you think about innovation, it doesn't come in one neat box. It really transcends all of the disciplines. And our main goal here is to empower teachers, right? To make intellectual property relevant, engaging for students, accessible to students at all levels, right? And thinking about sparking that curiosity and showing them that they can have a real world impact on their ideas while thinking about how to protect those ideas. I'll give you a couple of examples. One inspiring example comes to mind is from a middle school technology educator in Florida, Deborah Jacoby, who participated in our program and has since created a wonderful curriculum module that integrates intellectual property into the STEM curriculum. And hopefully someone will drop that link. It's a paper on how she has effectively done this. But it's interesting. She started by asking her students the following question: who owns the work you submit to STEM competitions? And she soon realized the importance of connecting intellectual property education into the design thinking process, right? And as a result of that, found a community of educators around the country who had successfully integrated IP lessons into STEM programs, from STEAM to convergence education, maker, innovation, entrepreneurship, computer science, the whole 9 yards. Another quick example comes from a high school physics teacher in Texas, Yaritza Ortiz, who has been working on this for over a decade, who incorporates intellectual property into her engineering and entrepreneurship class. And after participating in this MTIP training program at the USPTO, she now routinely guides students through the process of developing their own business ideas, teaching them not only to think creatively, but also to consider the intellectual property implications right from the beginning.
Yeah,
So these are just a couple of examples that just wanted to highlight about the MTIP program, and we hope that you will look at some of these resources like Equip HQ is a valuable resource. I'm sorry, Reggie, we didn't have it with you when you went through NSTI, but now it's available free. It's all the resources are there for free for everyone to really take advantage and use this as a set of tools to help bring innovation and intellectual property into classroom instruction.
Thank you for
and
sharing
going
those
and
stories,
going beyond the
Dr.
technology. Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Always
Sure.
great plug for Beyond Technology.
Yes.
And thank you for sharing those stories. I also want to make sure, I also wanted to ask Melinda a specific question for you. And I was wondering, how does Pets in the Classroom grant program enhance students' understandings of STEM concepts, particularly in areas like biodiversity, ecosystems, and animal behavior? And I was wondering if you could share specific examples of how students' interactions with classroom pets have really sparked curiosity and a deeper engagement with science topics.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I think we can all think back to a time and an interaction that we've had with a pet, whether it be in an educational setting or in our personal lives, and we can apply that to STEM. And our teachers have the option to select any pet that they like, and I will give you some of the options that they have selected, because you'll see that many different passions or personalities or learning can come from each of these. But so tropical fish, guinea pigs, bearded dragons, leopard geckos, hermit crabs, snakes, any option. We also have therapy dogs that are in the classroom, and we can integrate that into STEM education. But I thought I would share just a few of the ways that teachers share with us how they've implemented this into their daily activities. And often it might start with the pet care guides, right? They're reviewing these with the students so the students can understand animal behaviors or characteristics that are in their habitats. And with that, we have a teacher who selected a leopard gecko. Well, her class quickly learned that there are over 1,500 species of geckos. So that led them to compare and contrast, and then also to explore where those different types of geckos live in the world and what are those habitats. So when they have that leopard gecko in the classroom, it allows them to just visually see what their gecko looks like compared to what other geckos might live in other parts of the world. And often that will lead the teachers to be able to do compare and contrast, right? Literally comparing reptiles to amphibians or looking at the different classifications at a detailed level. So having something that you can just see and hold allows you to imagine the rest. We also have a teacher who had a bearded dragon, and with that, they too studied reptiles and said, okay, well, where do reptiles live and what are the other animals that are looking in that biosystem, in that biodiversity of all of the other animals and plant life that live there. So then again, just looking, how does the world fit together? What are we looking at for, say, food chains? So one of our teachers that happened to be in Florida, she just did a presentation on estuaries. And so she was introducing her students to this with various tropical fish and other living creatures that would be in an estuary. And then they actually took a field trip to explore things in nature. So it's just really exciting of when we can see something and we can hold it, or it's in a tank, it really helps us relate to that. And especially in today, when we have so many things like climate change, they're also able to look at how does water level, how do contaminants in water, how does temperature impact our animals? And our students, their empathy and their compassion for these animals, it gives them a greater perspective because they become very attached and very inspired to make sure that their animal is well cared for. And so how does that relate to other parts of nature? But I also want to give you a couple other quick kind of fun ones that teachers have done. We had a teacher who brought an animal, it was a bearded dragon, into the classroom, and these were first grade students in the beginning, and she has them for multiple years in her gifted program. But they literally started to learn measurements, right? Starting to use snap cubes to measure this juvenile bearded dragon, which was just a couple snap cubes long. And now 2 years later, it's 18 inches. So they're also learning, conversion and some of those tools and skills that we know are so important to the sciences that we have. And then students are amazing. They will take their own creativity. And so this bearded dragon's name is Remy, and they have incorporated Remy into all of their word problems. And for an example of that, how many crickets does Remy eat in a day? And if Remy eats 25, how many crickets is Remy going to eat in a week or in a month? And then they can even take that over to dollars. What will that cost? So there are just a lot of fun ways that teachers can implement that. And then when we also talk about even our dogs in the classroom program, when we have visiting therapy dogs, we have teachers that will explore different breeds of dogs and their characteristics. And this is really important when we're talking about pets, even in our own home or in our communities, to understand their behaviors. We know that certain dog breeds need more exercise than others, and some are just going to veg out on your couch for the entire day. But I think it's really important that students have these opportunities to explore all different attributes of STEM education.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And it's great to hear about Remy the bearded dragon. And thank you for those in the audience who also shared their stories about pets in their classroom. I want to open this up to all the panelists, and we're here talking about diversity in STEM and creating an inclusive STEM, or creating an inclusive environment, is essential for fostering a diverse pipeline of future STEM leaders. And so I was wondering, what strategies or practices would you recommend to educators who want to ensure that all students feel welcome and engaged in STEM learning? And I'd love to direct this to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office if you guys would like the first stab at the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously know that, your geographic location, your access to resources and opportunities should not determine who becomes an inventor. Unfortunately, that is a barrier. Those are barriers that we're trying to knock down, right? And we know that students are less likely to be what they cannot see. So a lot of the things that we work on is making sure all students see themselves in invention. Obviously, innovation is the reason why we are where we are today, and why we are going to continue to go where we go in the future, right? So along that path, there's a few things that we're going to share with you. We actually have just coordinated with the Cade Museum in Gainesville, Florida. We have a series, and I believe that was already dropped in the chat here, but we do have a video series that we created in collaboration with the Cade Museum, where students can engage in STEM and invention with everyday objects around them, kind of dealing with the theme of invention. So every week leading up to Thanksgiving, there's going to be another video that's put out, different STEM experiment that they would do in their classroom. And then we're teaching them kind of the intellectual property and some of the history of patented inventions that are connected to some of these activities. We know the importance of all these students seeing themselves in STEM, but also as a past educator, I know how crucial it can be in making sure that we can lower the floor for in terms of a rampway for students to come on and see themselves in invention. And by lower, I just mean more often than not, these students, they put these things up on a pedestal, right? I can't be Albert Einstein and, they all think they have to create the latest and greatest and best of all time. You have to create time travel and things of that nature. But we have a lot of resources just to help them understand how incremental invention is, right? And how we iterate upon past inventions and ideas that others have had before us. But as far as them seeing themselves, as you can see behind us, my colleague and I have our inventor collectible trading cards. We have 28 trading cards where we also have on our website lesson plans associated with some of the cards, not all, on that Equip HQ site that was dropped as well, although we realize that is a tech tool. There is a new activity that's been unveiled called Invent AR 360. So kind of inventor with an A. So an augmented reality component where students can interact with some of the cards and even have some of the inventors speak directly to them, right? For example, I know Dr. Roy has over 100 inventions in wheelchair-assisted technology. He is a strong champion of the work we do here in our office with students, but he's him, along with I think probably 5 other inventors currently with the cars we have recorded videos. So when a student points their device at the car, they're able to engage with the content, whether it's seeing the patented invention in an AR environment or hearing directly from inventors like Dr. as they kind of share their pathways that they've gone through as inventors.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. In the interest of time, I'd also love to direct the question over to Hannah and Hugo.
Yeah, I mean, specifically with the project that I'm working on, I mean, finding role models, for our students, like bringing them into class, if you have to be creative. I mean, especially with our rural students in our program, I mean, do a virtual, meetup with them. It wasn't easy, obviously, finding these role models for these students. So, don't give up. You might have to do some cold call emails to businesses or specific people, do a social media ask, or even like ask your connections that you have. It might take a couple of tries, but someone's going to be willing to help. And I think that's super important. Be intentional, figure out, your student population, kind of what we did with our program. Like, we really do want to try to find somebody who is local, who looks like our students, who come from the same background. Students also do enjoy, talking to somebody or hearing from somebody who is close in age with them too. We try to do that in our program as well. We call them near peers, so they are current students in some sort of post-secondary program. And surprisingly, we have a couple of students who are willing to help, and it's really amazing for them to share their experiences, and especially their time in high school and how they've prepared to be where they're at today, or even apply for scholarships as well. But at the end of the day, like, you'll find the right role models and someone's going to be willing to help, whether it's in person or virtually. So.
Yeah, and if I could add a couple more things there that we've learned also, is just integrating local context. So connecting STEM topics and careers to the unique cultural, environmental, and economic aspects of your region or community. So for example, for our region, we've had to get creative with STEM. Like I mentioned, we don't have those huge tech companies here in our region. However, there are a lot of STEM careers in agriculture. There's a lot of careers in renewable energy, which are big industries here in our region, advanced manufacturing as well. So helping our students be aware of those opportunities here that are close to them. Along with that also, as I mentioned in the opening, just hands-on and career-connected learning opportunities. So students can apply what they're learning to what's actually out there as far as a job or a career, and they can see themselves maybe doing that down the line. But just having that exposure to that would be amazing. And then one thing we always try to do, but I think it's very important, is just incorporating student voice. So that's one thing we're trying to get really good at. So creating platforms for students to share feedback about their learning experiences and also involve them in the decision-making process related to any of these projects or activities as well.
Thank you. And Melinda, I'd love to hear how you see this in Pets in the Classroom.
Well, the great thing about having a pet is it doesn't judge, right? It's just an emotionally safe place for students to learn and explore their passions and their interest. And as I shared, it can be anything with their habitats or ecosystems, or with their with any of the natural sciences section. But I think one of the things that we see with students in that emotional safe place is there is that exploration, right? What can they do? And that comes with the most basic skills. We can read to our pets, and they don't, we don't, if we trip over a word, such as I just did, they won't judge, they'll just let us take it on to that next place. And from there, we can learn about what their habitats are and what they want to survive. We have a first grader who became the animal care specialist, and that enabled her to get some life skills of having some confidence as she talked to her peers. And then also saying, okay, I can learn this in first grade. Where is it going to take me for my future exploration of all the sciences?
Yes, thank you. We also like to reserve some time to look at audience questions. So if you're in the audience and have any questions you'd like to ask our panelists, please drop them in the Q&A feature. I think I do see one right now. So for all the panelists, what are your preferred tools to measure deep engagement, STEM mindset shift for long-term stickiness? Feel free to jump in.
Well, for us, I will tell you, our students are very passionate about these animals and living creatures. And you talk about stickiness. We love the fact that they're learning about proper care and proper environments and proper nutrition. And that has really led many of them to go on into animal care fields. So when we talk about stickiness, animals that they might not even have any kind of relationship with, maybe from the middle of the US, but they learn about marine biology, or maybe they're learning about reptiles that don't live in their area. But it really does give them that exploration of what can they do in their future. And then also gives them the skill set to work with others, such as some of our schools have hydroponics and they're growing their food for their guinea pigs and their small animals. And that's a really cool connection for people to realize how the world interconnects.
Sam, I'd like to jump in also and address that question. I spent about 12 years in the classroom. And for me, one of the ways I would measure engagement and are the students having fun, right? And am I having fun as well as an educator? One of the most powerful strategies that I have learned in my career and working at the USPTO and the work that we do in innovation and STEM is to really focus the lessons around real world problems, right? Real world problems that students care about. See, we've talked in past years about the STEM identity, right? Having students identify themselves as STEM professionals. There's an opportunity here to lift the inventor or innovation identity that students may have or develop, along their educational pathways. And I think when students see STEM and innovation, as a way to address issues in their own communities, the problem becomes very real, like sustainability or health or social justice. They feel or they can feel a personal connection to that subject. And this approach, I think, builds not only engagement, but also highlights the different ways that that they can contribute to STEM fields and be part of that STEM ecosystem.
Go ahead,
Go
Hannah.
ahead.
Okay, all right. We might be thinking the
You
same
go.
thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so for our project, one of the things that we're doing as far as measuring engagement and impact is I go back to that student feedback and student voice, right? So we make sure to incorporate how students are feeling throughout the project, and we do that through surveys as well as listening sessions with our students. And so every year, we compile those answers, we review them, and we see how we can continue to improve our program as the years go on. So it's really incorporating that feedback, listening to what our students want and need, and then seeing how we can improve our programs based on that feedback.
Yeah, for example, I work directly with my students, so I like to hear their feedback. And some of the things that I try to listen in is, what are they interested in learning? Obviously, like we said, we are intentional in finding the right role models, but also we want to find career paths that they're interested in. Because, hey, if you want to be a nurse, but you don't know anyone who's a nurse or like really how that career path is going to look, well, let's try to find somebody who is in that pathway and can share their experiences. And maybe that can be a driver for them to decide whether they want to pursue it or not. So,
Yeah, thank you. And I think we have a somewhat related question from the audience. And I think it's what are your drivers for sustainability and what would you recommend other organizations consider for their sustainable practices? And I'd love to start off with the Patent and Trademark Office, if you guys like to to comment on it?
So great question. Sustainability, important topic. I think you have to have there's a quote, famous quote that our boss Joyce Ward oftentimes cites, which is don't underestimate the power that a few people can have in changing the world. And I think that has resonated throughout my entire career here at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. And the deep passion and commitment, when you bring people together with that kind of deep passion and commitment, you're going to find ways, no pun intended, and invent new ways to ensure that there is sustainability over time, and that you are oftentimes, inventing new ways to think about how you meet the needs of the community, because obviously that is going to change over time. So I think that adaptability and thinking about, commitment and personal connection and dedication to that mission, I think goes a long way in ensuring sustainability.
Yeah, I want to piggyback a bit on what Dr. Valdez shared. So we know invention is not a straight line, right? And there is no end destination towards invention. So I think a lot of that sustainability also comes from, I think about my time with my students, helping them see that we're not just solving the problems that are in front of us, right? We are equipping you with the tools to solve problems that are coming, but also give you an ability to look at the world differently. We should constantly be looking for ways that we can innovate and improve upon. Things that we already have that exist. So a lot of my students, very popular was the video games, right? And I just would say, hey, would you want to just play this version of the game station, whatever, 4, or do you want to play the game station 75 when it comes out, right? So that sustainability piece and helping them kind of really understand that this is a shift in the way of thinking, right? And it's also a pedagogical shift when we think about invention education, right? Helping our students to no longer encounter that dreaded, I'm sure many of us educators have met this conversation before, Mr. D, why are we doing this? Or Mr. D, I don't even know how to do this because I'm gonna play and such, and helping just really understand that, these tools that we're equipping you with, no pun intended, our Equip HQ site, are gonna help to drive you to be successful in anything that you pursue. And that also sustainability piece, I say programming, like obviously like our master teachers have mentioned intellectual property program, providing opportunities, pathways for educators to become leaders, not only within their communities, but beyond, right? And then that word spreads like wildfire, right? So I was obviously a part of the NSTI experience. It was something that actually completely changed my mind as to what and how, why and how my students learn, but kind of seeing how those teachers then resonates with them, and then they continue to spread the word to the next group and the next group and the next group. So this invention thing, quote unquote, is no longer this niche concept, right? We have this now new understanding is this is what learning is in the first place. I'm giving you the skills that you need, the tools that you need to solve all types of different problems. So that sustainability I see through both students, teachers, and obviously programming.
Yeah, and Melinda, would you also like to share in on this question?
Yeah, listening to Reggie, it's interesting. We might have different approaches, right? But we have many common goals. And I think that's to really engage those students and to make learning interactive and fun. And I think that's one of the things that drives us the most, is that when we hear all of the engagement and how students just blossom, we just want to keep replicating that and making this available to more classrooms. We've already been able to impact over 250,000 classrooms, and that's really exciting for us to be able to bring tools to teachers so that they can implement different areas of education, and just make it really fun for kids. So really, for us, the driving force is the students, and then of course to keep enabling teachers to have these tools, and to even provide a better experience. For us, could be more lesson plans or just more dollars to help support the teachers. So it's all about the students and making learning fun and in a very natural course of action.
And if I can jump in there also, Sam. So for us, I think one of the biggest drivers for sustainability is really working with a cross-sector of regional partners. I think that by helping our students graduate STEM literate, have those skills, pursue STEM pathways, is really going to help just the future of our state and our communities. Like I mentioned earlier, so many of the jobs in Washington State require STEM skills. And so for our students to be able to find jobs that are in demand and responsive to our labor market, some of these programs are necessary. So it's working with, partners across from pre-K, early learning, K-12, post-secondary institutions, whether that's 4-year, 2-year community and technical colleges, apprenticeships, short-term training, et cetera, community-based organizations, student-serving organizations, workforce development. So just really all these partners, which our work wouldn't be possible without being engaged with all of them. But I think it's really thinking about what's the long-term impact that we're having on our communities and our state, and ensuring that our students are going to be equipped and ready for these careers that are out there for them.
Thank you. And I know there are a lot of members in the audience asking for contact information. We have dropped those in the chat and we'll continue to do so. So if you'd like to get in touch with any of our panelists, you will be able to do that. But I just wanted to thank you guys for all of your thoughtful responses. Diversity in STEM truly matters, and the work that each of you is doing ensures that more students see themselves represented and feel that they belong at so many different tables. So to all of our panelists, thank you for sharing your insights and your inspiring approaches. And this has been just the start to an incredible conversation. And I hope it sparks new ideas for everybody joining us today on Zoom. It has been an immense privilege to moderate this very important conversation. So thank you. I will now hand it back to Mecca to close us out for today.
Thanks, Sam. So thank you, everyone. That was a great conversation. I really appreciate it. I was just furiously taking notes over here. So I'll just say one quick thing. I just appreciated Hannah's comment about not giving up and really being intentional about ensuring that students have the resources, and whether that be the people resources, the physical resources, the tech, the beyond tech resources that they need, and just encourage us to all leave with that in mind about the importance of intentionality, so that our students can really, as many people mentioned, see what they want to be, and so that we can continue to expose them into different classes and careers and pathways to and through STEM, because we know that this is just such a rapidly changing environment, and we want all of our students to have access to really high quality experiences. So again, thank you so much to all of our panelists for taking time to share your expertise with us. Thank you so much, Sam, for moderating this conversation and for all of your thoughtful preparation. We also have a couple of colleagues behind the scenes, Lisa and Robbie, who are sort of on our tech and logistics side. Thank you all so much for ensuring that we have a really smooth webinar today. And then the last thing I'll just name is the Biden-Harris administration has just been such a huge proponent and supporter of STEM education, and has in fact invested over $1.6 billion to ensure that our youngest learners, all the way to our post-secondary graduates, have the opportunity to access high-quality learning experiences in STEM. And so again, encourage folks to sort of look that up if you didn't know about it, advocate for federal investments, continue to hold us, your federal partners, to account to invest in STEM, so that we can continue these conversations, highlight these promising practices, and really ensure that we are doing all we can to be intentional and increase equity and access across STEM. So that is the end of our 7-part You Belong in STEM webinar series. Thank you all so much for joining. Take care.